And so you were mentioning, continuing into worsening weather.
Correct.
Flying into IMC conditions and the controlled flight into terrain that could potentially happen after that. How would you address that kind of risk factor as it began? We all talk about the error chain forming, and where in the error chain do we need to address something like that?
I think we all have to admit that the airlines don't always make it to their destination. There will be circumstances in which the wiser thing to do would be to do a diversion, change your plans, not go, and much of that happens before you even start your flight. And as I say, where you're going through the PAVE checklist, and you get to the E part of it, and so you tell people, don't wait at the airport for me, I'll call you when I get in. So you don't have this business of people waiting. And that way, if you land and get fuel en route, you can call them up and say, well, knock it back an hour. So they're not sitting at the airport waiting for you. So what you do is you give yourself an out, and you build that in advance when you plan the trip. We take, or at least we plan to take when we do overnight flying, or any kind of trip, even for a $100 hamburger, take an overnight bag with you, so that if you get fatigued, things aren't working out, you just land, check into a hotel, and have a pleasant evening, maybe a nice dinner, go to bed, and start over again the next morning. So having an overnight bag with you would give you that option that you can just quit anytime you want to. So I guess what I'm saying is, as a pilot, the way I would manage those risks is build in and out every step of the way. Build in, have an overnight bag with you if you're going on a trip that's even like to another airport. Tell people that you'll call them when you get on the ground. And I think it's a wise idea to build in some extra time. Give them, tell them you're going to be there an hour later than you actually plan to be there. And if you do get there early, you can refuel the airplane for the next leg, clean the windshield, do all of the things, relax, have a drink of water, and so get your luggage all sorted out. And so that way you don't feel in a hurry to make a deadline. So build in some time all around. Give yourself an out. Give yourself ways you can save face for not making the goal that you thought you were going to do. So I think that's the most important management of all general aviation, is to manage this goal-oriented behavior so that you don't press on when you shouldn't.
And if you are pressing on into weather that's deteriorating, what should you do at that point? I mean, as we start out and go toward Albuquerque, we find that the weather is lower than those minimums of 5,000 or whatever. One,
you've built in options. You go early so you have time. Number two, you have set out with a mindset that I'm not going to get myself into a trap, because the trap is very stressful. It's it pressures you a tremendous amount. So you give yourself outs by saying, well, I have figured out where you could land elsewhere, how you could divert to a different route, how you could return, leave early enough that you could return, go back to Phoenix, and get on that airliner. Okay. So you build in outs for yourself, and so if the weather starts getting marginal, you say, I don't need this. I'm not going to take this risk. I'm not going to put myself in this situation. I'm just going to use that option that I thought about earlier and go back to Phoenix.
So John, on the same idea on our trip to Albuquerque and your personal minimums and limitations, how would your personal health come into play again? We talked about this earlier, but let's talk about some of the specific things that could be involved here that you'd want to consider. Maybe it's springtime, you have allergies. Okay. What does that do?
Well, we talked about illness. Of course, that's the first part of I'm safe. But having a cold is a risk factor for having a sinus problem or an ear problem. And the way life works is eustachian tubes, or eustachian, how do you pronounce those? Eustachian tubes allow the air out pretty easily, but coming back down, they tend to get pinched, and you get a real problem in your ears. And it can be very, very, very painful to have it blocked ears as you're descending, and it can be very distracting. The answer is, if they were clear 1,000 feet ago, go back up 1,000 feet, and then try and flex your jaw as you go down, and go down slowly. But you can always kind of recover by going back up and then starting down and going maybe a little more slowly and flexing your jaw down. But those are serious issues and very distracting for you and your passengers. So you'd want to go back up and try it again and have them flex their jaw and
chew a little gum.
Yeah. Just anything to kind of free the eustachian tube.
I used to have my daughter suck on candy and things like that. They loved it. They loved it.
They would fake it, huh?
Lollipop. Oh, Mom. How does spatial disorientation enter into perhaps an ear issue?
Well, anything that interferes with your system of knowing which way is up and which way is down, one of the things your ears help you do that, could cause you to become disoriented. You don't know which way is up and which way is down. So clearing your ears would be a big part of it. And then, of course, if you're a pilot and you're disoriented, and someone says, well, do you get vertigo? The answer is everybody gets vertigo. And you can use your instruments, although VFR pilots are required to fly VFR, can't fly in the clouds, but you could certainly use your instruments to help you, and looking outside and seeing where the horizon are. But mostly that's going to be a problem associated with an ear problem generally. So all of that all ties together.
How about passenger in the back is very quiet, looking a little like the color of your shirt? What could...
They might be suffering from motion sickness, and it could have been that I didn't help them out any at all, because I was flying abruptly and jerking the airplane around, and so they would begin to get nauseous and not feeling good. If I get seasick on a boat, and I could be as manly as I want, but I still get seasick on a boat.
You're throwing up over the side.
Yeah. I mean manly, but I'm throwing up over the side. And so the answer is try and be as calming and reassuring to them as you can. Make your motions very, very smooth. And maybe it would help if they look outside a little bit. It's a kind of a confusion between what their head is seeing, what their ears are feeling. And so have them look out and look a little further away, I think would help.
So doing steep turns over the trees is
would not be a good
the
time to do
answer
steep turns,
dream.
and challenge their mechanism for knowing which way is up and which way is down.
I understand, and those vents are often a good idea too, to get some air back
Give them a little
there.
cooling. Yes.
Yeah. What kind of issue could come up? Let's say we're flying along in the winter time, and you start to feel kind of drowsy and not quite like yourself. What could be occurring there?
Well, if everybody in the airplane is beginning to feel a little lousy, including you, the pilot, there's a possibility you had carbon monoxide leaking in from the heater system into the cockpit. That'd be a very, very serious thing. So if you have any hint of anything smelling like exhaust coming into the cockpit, certainly want to react to that. And it would shut off the heaters to the aircraft, open the outside vents, get air in the cockpit. And that would come about because very often the way we have heaters in little airplanes is we run the exhaust through a heat exchanger, and the exhaust heats up the air coming into the aircraft and supplies us with warm air. If there happened to be a leak in between the exhaust and the air system, and it brings in carbon monoxide into the cabin, that would be a very, very bad thing. So you would certainly want to respond to that immediately. Shut off the heater, shut off any engine connections with the cabin, open the vents, outside air vents, and you would want to get the airplane on the ground very quickly. Right. And they could be in serious medical. They might need medical help right away.
And is that something that you recover from fairly quickly, or is this going to take a while?
No, what's happened is that your blood, the hemoglobin in your blood, has a preference for carbon monoxide over oxygen. And so what happens is the hemoglobin of your blood combines with that carbon monoxide and prevents the ability of oxygen to combine with the hemoglobin. And so as a result, it's going to take a good period of time for your hemoglobin to get rid of that carbon monoxide. So you're down for the duration here. You're down for a while because you're not going to recover quickly from that.
Right, and to take off and fly again could really be fatal.
You wouldn't want to do that,
Yeah.
no.
Okay, thank you. How about optical illusions? You know, in what circumstance would that occur, and how much of a risk might that be if you were?
It can be a risk. Basically, your optical illusion comes about when the eyes see something and the brain interprets it different from reality. And so let's assume that you come in with a runway with a slope. And you see this sloping runway and you're used to a normal angle, and so a runway that slopes up could induce you to wind up coming in low by accident. So those are the kinds of illusions you might have, and it's what you have to do is have numbers. I'm 300 feet per nautical mile. If I'm 5 miles out, I want to be at 1,500 feet. If I'm not at the proper altitude, the brain needs to overcome what the eyes are telling it.
Very good. So you have benchmarks of altitude.
You have benchmarks on the way in.
That's a great
normal
idea.
3-degree glide path is about 300 feet per nautical mile. So if you're 5 miles out, you should be 1,500 feet.
Okay, that's a good way to address that. All right. Good job on the aeromedical.
Okay, it's good to hear.